Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to the Southeast Asia Climate and Health Responder course. This is our second session today where we'll be covering extreme weather events and disasters. My name is Cecilia Sorensen, and I'm the director of the Global Consortium on Climate and Health Education based at Columbia University, and I'm delighted to see everybody here today. So just as a reminder, this course is brought to you by St. Luke's Medical Center, the Global Consortium on Climate and Health Education, and Healthcare Without Harm. And it's through this tremendous collaboration where we're all seeing just huge regional needs in Southeast Asia to address the climate and health crisis that we've come together to put together this course. So thank you so much for joining us. As many of you know, this is an 8-session course, which will run over the course of the next, now 3 weeks. And we are in our second session today, which will be on extreme weather events and disasters. So just a few general considerations before we get started. Just so you know, your attendance will be verified when you are connected through the Zoom link which you received. There is a certificate associated with this course, and we will use your participation via your Zoom link to confirm that you are here for 6 out of 8 sessions in order to get the certificate. For your awareness, these are 90-minute sessions, and we will have plenty of time, hopefully, for question and answer. If you do have any questions for our speaker today, please put them in the chat, and we'll be sure to grab them out of the chat and address them to our speaker to hopefully get your questions answered. If you're unable to stay for the whole session, just a note that each session will be recorded and will be posted on the course website along with the slide decks for the main presentation. And you can find the link to the course website in the chat right now. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Brian Lung from the Belmont Forum, who is going to be sharing with everyone today a really exciting opportunity for research and collaboration. So over to you.
Thank you so much, Cecilia, for the introduction. And thank you for having me today to share this opportunity for everyone here. And I think you addressed it really well, the need for the region, the need to have funding for the region, especially related to climate and health. So this wonderful opportunity is a global collaboration among 20 plus different partners from around the world, scientific funding agencies, when we put together a call related to climate and hi. Sorry about the mute situation. Thank you for having me, Cecilia. And I'm glad to be here to share this opportunity with you all today. It's definitely there's a need in the region. And I think this climate, environment, health call is from the Belmont Forum is a partnership from 20 plus different organizations from around the world. And to jump in, today I'll talk a little bit about the eligibility, the funding themes, and the upcoming events. I'll also drop more of the detailed information to the chat here. So if you'd like to follow along to find all these details, it's in the chat right now. So eligibility, there's one application for everyone, for every one team. All the funding annexes and the details and requirements are located online, these specific institutional annexes. All projects must include a researcher from at least 3 different countries. So this is a multi-country collaboration and include 3 different funding sources from the call. You'll notice that there are 20 different partners. So there's multiple opportunities to find your country there. And there's over 100 countries represented are eligible for funding. The projects must be transdisciplinary, meaning that it must be a natural, a social, or a non-academic stakeholder. And we ask participants and researchers to identify that in the proposal. And the concept is that the proposal should be a group of researchers working together to share these equitable outputs. And if your country is not located as eligible for funding, you can come in as in-kind. So I'm going to jump right into the themes for the call. The first theme is decision science of environmental behavior implementation. And what we mean by that is we want people to identify or create a knowledge base to overcome barriers, to understand individual population adaptation to climate-related threats, such as migration, biomedical or behavioral health intervention strategies at the community level, creating database or early warning systems or workforce development for projects that provide solutions, which is really timely because we're talking about early warning systems and natural disasters today. And we want to find ways to, or we're hoping the teams can find ways to reduce adaptation costs, premature deaths, et cetera, et cetera. And this is all going to be online for you. Theme B is more along the lines of the One Health approach. So looking at protecting human and ecological health, climate-sensitive foodborne, waterborne, and vector-borne diseases, looking at mental health, addressing people living with disabilities, and system-level strategies to mitigate or adapt to food, environment, and biological security. Theme C is at risk to is more like planetary health and ecological health. So climate change across a wide variety of timescales and environments. Wildfires, chronic heat exposure, migration of wildlife, interface with domestic animals and humans, and system-level strategies. So the timeline of this proposal is has started already. It was launched on February 15th. The BF Go portal, so where we ask participants to submit their proposal, is on BF Go, and that was opened on April 15th. The pre-proposal call is going to close on July 15th, so you still have time to build a team and put your proposals in. After that, we'll have a panel of experts review the proposal, and the submissions will be, and if that goes through and you are made to the next round, the full proposals will be due in January. And we're hoping to have the projects kick off and start in June 2024. So in summary, what the rules of eligibility are 333. Think about the three different types of scientists or researchers from 3 different countries using 3 different organizations. And their projects, we're hoping the projects include theme A and B, theme A and C, or integration of all three, theme A, B, and C. We have some upcoming events as well. It goes a little more in detail with what the eligibility and the how to read the annexes and how to work with them. And also a lot more networking events that are coming up in Panama, and they're all hybrid. All this information is online. The Philippines, for example, is eligible for funding in this call. So I think it's definitely worth looking into. And if you have any questions, this is email to email, info@belmontforum.org. And in your title, just put in CEH2 query and it will come directly to me. And with that, I will pass it back to Cecilia, and apologies for the mute situation earlier.
No worries. Thank you so much, Brian, for sharing this really exciting opportunity for us to sort of think about research and collaboration as it relates to climate and health, planetary health, One Health. Thank you all so much. For those of you in the audience who are researchers, who are from civil society, who work in the health sector, this is really a call for us to really come together and think about sort of the larger issues that affect health in our regions and how we can sort of strategize and work collaboratively to address that. So thank you so much for joining us, Brian. Next, I'd like to introduce our main speaker for today, who is Dr. Ron Law. He is the Chief of Preparedness of the Department of Health's Emergency Bureau. He oversees disaster risk reduction and management and health policies, plans, programs, training, and advocacy to contribute to health system resilience. He is also a huge advocate for environmental and planetary health. And so I'm delighted to welcome you here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that very generous introduction. Again, good day to everyone. So at this point, let me just share my screen. So there you go. So can I get a confirmation if I'm coming in loud and clear?
You're loud and clear. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Again, good day, everyone. So I hope you're all safe and sound, and I'm really glad to be one of the faculty for this, if I may say, trailblazing and wonderful course on climate change and health responder course in Southeast Asia. So to those avid learners here in the call, from the region, from the different parts of the world, especially to my colleagues in the Philippines, yeah, good day. So I'm going to facilitate our session on extreme weather events and disasters. And my role is to here to give you inputs and share some insights and experiences that I hope can add to your knowledge and, of course, eventually improve your skills in addressing this important topic in your specific setting and context. So I'll be guided by this outline. So for the first 30 minutes, I'll walk you through the definition and types of extreme weather events, how this would relate to climate change and disaster risks, what their impacts are to our society, and of course to our health system. And we also need to know what measures and the public health response should we be prepared for. And this will be followed by a case study that will highlight our Philippine experience on extreme weather events and what our government is doing and what the health sector role is in our response. So we plan to do this for another 30 minutes. And in the last part, I hope we can have some application of all your learnings here. So through an interactive exercise, we will simulate the entry of an actual extreme weather event, look at its impacts, and we will drill down our response in terms of what are we going to do to make to do given the scenario, and of course to consume the remaining minutes, so we will have a Q&A session where you can ask me questions. So yeah, I hope this plan works for all of us. Moving on, let's go to the meat of our topic. So we start with the definition. So what is extreme weather event? Right. So we look at the two definitions that we're using, and these are coming from two very authoritative sources. So first, let me cite the definition from the special report of IPCC on extreme events, or the SRENs. So here you can see that extreme climate or weather event or climate extreme is the occurrence of value of a weather or climate variable that is either above or below a threshold value near the upper or lower ends of the range of observed values of the variable. Let's wait along. So let's go to the other definition. So this one coming from the IPCC report of 2021. So here, extreme weather event is defined as an event that is rare at a particular place and time of the year. So how extreme is extreme can be gauged in terms of this happening where and when. So take note of the words rare, place, and time. And if this happens to persist for some time, such as a season, now this can be termed as an extreme climate event.
Dr. Law, your audio is breaking up. Sorry to interrupt.
All right, is this better?
It's a little bit better, yes.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, I'm gonna turn off my video to preserve bandwidth, if that's okay with you. Can I do that? So moving on. So let's see and appreciate in terms of pictures what extreme weather events are. So in 2022, I'd like to share with you what we were able to gather. So these are the 10 devastating extreme weather events last year. So let's appreciate it through pictures. So the first one here, so many parts of the world experienced severe flooding last year. And that happened in Pakistan. So many people were killed. Many people were also displaced, millions of them. And this followed a record-breaking monsoon in June. So other countries such as India, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan also had the same thing. So the next picture, the second one, these are massive floods in Pakistan and other neighbors in Central Asia. So 2 months before the monsoon, so South and Central Asia was hit by a heat wave. So the third one, the third picture is, this is in China. So from June to August of last year, they experienced their worst heat wave in 60 years. And they recorded temperatures exceeding 40 degrees Celsius in several of their provinces. The fourth one is in Europe. So we saw record high temperatures, so it did not spare the West. So we saw this in the US and some countries across Europe. And in Germany, they recorded more than 40 degrees Celsius for the first time ever, I think back in July last year. While in UK, they also had very hot temperatures. So the drought here in this place of the world also caused wildfires. And this happened in countries such as France, Greece, Portugal, and even Spain. So the fifth one is in Malaysia, in our region. So Malaysia had experienced monsoon rains. So this started in December 2021. So this was also the time when the Philippines was hit by an equally strong typhoon. So what happened in Malaysia, this continued until 2022. And this to them is their worst flooding ever in the country's history. So talking about record-breaking temperatures here. So the sixth one happened right here in the Philippines. So this is after Typhoon Rai in the Philippines. We call that locally here as Odette. So it killed more than 400 people. And yeah, in our country, we would have around 6 super typhoons a year. So this we call our new normal, and many people were killed because of massive landslides and floods. And the seventh picture is Hurricane Ian. This struck the state of Florida at the end of September, and this caused the region's most deaths by a hurricane in almost 90 years, for a long time. The eighth one is from the Middle East. So here we see problems with sandstorms. So it hit them around May. So many people were hospitalized for respiratory issues. And this also caused disrupted flights in key cities. The ninth one is in Africa, which comprises many countries as well. So they experienced drought, and this drought has caused one of the most extreme food crises. So food security is also a top issue, and this is one of the worst that the continent has ever seen. And finally, the last picture is other parts of Africa. Here they had a lack of rain. So while other countries had lack of rain, here they experienced disastrous flooding. So many people were killed. At least 100,000 people were left homeless in Nigeria due to this flood. So these are very good pictures representing what extreme weather events are. And to discuss further, we need to distinguish between the different types of extreme events. So the literature is saying that, yeah, there's no precise definition of an extreme. Yeah, we know it's rare. So we are talking here of relative and absolute thresholds, of course, that we set scientists different parameters. But this can be defined based on two things. First, the probability of occurrence, or second, being related to specific impact related threshold. So more of looking at the impact side of it. So when we try to make this distinction, we also try to look into other aspects. We look at the duration. How long is it gonna last? So the spatial area affected, how expansive, how many regions will be affected, the size of the population, the timing as well, the frequency, the date of onset, even the continuity and the seasonal variations. And of course, we should recognize that this will vary from place to place. So even within the region, even within the Philippines, this would be a lot variable. So looking at these different parameters. And as public health, we need to look at this from the point of view that some of this may be cumulative. Some may accumulate. All of this impacts may be cumulative. Some are even compounded. So this will lead to bigger, more destructive impacts. So the right side will show you a table. So this sorts of outlines some climate extremes and their specific examples, things that we should be able to relate with. So for weather and climate variables, we look at temperature, the variations, the trends. We look at precipitation as well. We also look at wind. In terms of phenomena, so we are experiencing this looking at our monsoons. So like right now, the Philippines has typhoon inside our country, but this is interacting a lot with our monsoon. So this can give us a lot of compounded effects in terms of the rains, in terms of the sudden flooding. And this is also interacting with El Nino. We're already on the verge of an El Nino. So there's a very high likelihood. So our weather agency has already declared our red alert. So we are also managing this phenomenon already as it will happen in the next few days and months. And this is even related to our ENSO events. So our El Nino and of course the warm and the cool phases of this is very important to track. And of course, we are very familiar with the currents of tropical cyclones. So this is a very common phenomena impacting on our region in our country. So we can also look at climate extremes in terms of their impacts on the physical environment. So it can be the droughts that we are experiencing that can cause grave food security issues. It can be the floods. It can be the extreme sea level and coastal impacts, and even landslides. So all of this are important climate extremes and examples, and the level of experience will depend. It will vary a lot from country to country, looking at these different parameters. So why is this important? So these are different forms of extreme weather events that can happen, and this is the thing that we need to be prepared for, being health people. So what's the link of extreme weather events with climate change? So that's the big question, but it is already well established. It is unequivocal. So as said in the IPCC report, this is really brought about by human-induced greenhouse gas emissions. And here we can see that even with small increases in temperature, this can give us massive changes in extremes. So that is temperature extremes, precipitation, tropical cyclones, droughts, and with climate change within our midst, yeah, we can only expect that this extreme weather, these events will happen with larger magnitude. So this is what you can see on your right. With increased frequency, we can see this in new locations. So places that have never experienced this will be able to see this. And it can happen with different timing already and happen in new combinations in ways that we have never seen before, due to what I shared to be the compounding effect. So the illustration shows the interplay between extreme climate events and disasters. So what is the big connection between extreme weather events and disasters? So we have to note that extreme weather events are very important influencers they determine disaster risk. So along with, you can see here, vulnerability and exposure, which we can appreciate a lot in our region, in our countries, different degrees of them. And when this interacts with climate change, and we should also consider natural variability, of course, whether this is anthropogenic or human-induced. So all of this can lead to disaster risk. So the right side will tell us that development, on one hand, can also shape our disaster risk. So development can also cause some of these disasters. And on the other hand, we should also see that strategies on disaster risk management are important to reduce disaster risk. And climate change adaptation and reduction of our emissions can also decrease disaster risk. So that's the importance of disaster risk management in combination with climate change adaptation. So aside from addressing vulnerability and exposure, if we do something about weather and climate events, this is going to be one important area as well when we talk of disaster risk reduction. So I hope this is clear, the link between extreme weather events and disasters. This shows you the geographical trend of extreme weather events. Their specific manifestations in terms of extreme heat, extreme cold, and extreme precipitation, and including also the observed changes. So whether the trend is going up or down, and as to the confidence level, whether it is low to very likely. So this shows us that in most places, extreme weather events, precipitation have gone up. They were going up, and extreme cold went down. So in Southeast Asia, where Philippines is located, there's increasing extreme heat and extreme precipitation and decreasing extreme cold. So these are happening with high likelihood, and the attribution to human influence is very high. So this trend is also true in other countries within the region, and we shall say also in countries in other regions as well. So this problem is widespread, and we care about these extreme weather impacts because they have untoward effects to our society. And just to show some examples of them, so this can impact on water, which is very important to health, agriculture, of course, food security, even forestry, health, and even tourism. So health-wise, this is important, but in other sectors of the economy, of the society, especially economic, this is very important. So this impacts would contribute to a lot of economic losses, especially those caused by tropical cyclones, which we have sadly experienced here in our country. So these impacts can also influence population mobility because people, big populations, many people can get displaced and they might be relocated. So on the health side, we need to look at these issues. And what are the public health impacts of extreme weather events? So zeroing in on what can extreme weather events do to our public health system. So it can be summarized by 4 mechanisms. So this is very insightful, this article, if you can look this up. So it can be summarized by 4 mechanisms. First, it can cause damage to our communities. So it can impact us 2 ways. So it can have population impact. So many people can be affected. So diverse groups of them. So we are concerned about the vulnerable ones. It can cause a large area in terms of devastation, causing a lot of deaths, injuries, and trauma. So this is what we're all about. We're all about saving lives, right? Because of the severe impact to the population. But also there's another layer of issue here. So the damage to communities can also have some impacts to our infrastructure. So it can be direct or indirect. So direct is it can destroy our important facilities in water, sanitation, shelter, and of course, even our hospitals can be damaged. So this is direct impact. Indirectly, this can also affect our infrastructure, our power, telecommunications, and transport. So this can also indirectly impact on the delivery of services. The supply chain, we may have logistics, but the way they should be distributed. So this is important in a country with many islands. So this can be a big issue as well. So the second mechanism is through increasing public health needs. So the scale and event specific impacts will require a lot of response activities, right? So this will cause direct impacts, and we might have to evacuate our facilities, and then we can have problems related to food safety. Let's say if we will have a power outage or power failure. So hand in hand, these are important to look into. Thirdly, the extreme weather events can also give rise to unexpected demands, right? So the hazards that are encountered offer a few opportunities for learning and improvement, right? So partners are expected to fill roles may not be available due to adverse conditions, widespread demand, or command failures. And the public expectations for performance may outstrip capacity. Yeah, so this is also important. So there might be unexpected demands that we may not be able to attend to. And this can also impact on our response capacity. It can decrease our capacity to respond. So this can strain our system, pre-event, and even our response capacity. And this can affect our surveillance and impede response. So all in all, this can pose some problems to us. So these are different ways by which we should be concerned about public health impacts to our health system. And to be more specific, yeah, as a health system responding to extreme weather events, we can categorize the response into the following. So that's the left column, and to the right will be the corresponding activities. So the first group of response might be related to providing mass care and sheltering, because people will be displaced. So we have to be prepared for services to be provided to them. So this will be about operating and coordinating medical needs. So this will be the activities that we will be busy about. We will be busy also in terms of supporting general population shelters. So when people are displaced, they will be put somewhere. So sheltering will be done there, but we have to make sure all the important services, especially related to health, are there to prevent diseases, to ensure continuity of services. So this is going to be one important priority. There is going to be some work related to environmental investigation, because we can face some issues related to this in terms of sanitation, for example. So we need to continue the routine public health functions that can include inspection, assessment, and interventions. So this is very important, looking into the availability of safe water to prevent outbreaks. So this is very important as well. So third will be related to information management. We need to gather a lot of information, and we also need to come out with information for the people whom we serve. So this is through public information and giving warnings. So early warning systems are very important, and sharing a lot of information. So this will have to do with developing the content of the messages, which is very important in terms of the different hazards. So what health messages should be there. We should do that in ways that can be understood in all of the different communities, looking into different contexts. The way we farm out, disseminate the message. We also need to respond directly to requests. So there will be a lot of requests coming in. So all the hotlines are open. So we need to activate that, and we need to be very responsive to what people would need. And advising emergency managers also on health issues. So remember, we are also working with other sectors, other government agencies, other stakeholders, and at the end of the day, they would also expect health to provide some advice, medical advice, for the response. So that coordination is very important. And finally, of course, epidemiology and surveillance. So we need to continue on with our public health needs assessment and illness injury assessment, and even, of course, looking into the capacities, issues, gaps of our healthcare facilities, because this might be affected directly or indirectly. So these are different groups of actions that need to be done, that we need to mount in terms of response and the corresponding activities. So most of this will deal with the routine health functions that we have, but in ways that would be more challenging, and of course that can be problematic if we don't prepare well for these extreme weather events. So I think this ends the first part of my presentation. So I think we can entertain some questions, if we may. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Please feel free to use the chat box to ask your questions, or alternatively, you could raise your hand and we will unmute you so you can be able to ask your question verbally. Thank you. Following the question and answer session, we're going to do a case study on the Philippine public health response to extreme weather events. All right, Dr. Ron, there is a question that's asking, in regards to mass care and sheltering, are we considering zero embodied carbon materials or plastic and harmful non-sustainable options?
All right, so can you kindly repeat the question?
Yes. So they're asking if we are considering zero embodied carbon materials in regards to mass care and sheltering, or if we're utilizing plastic and harmful non-sustainable options.
Yeah, that should be an important consideration. Yeah, that's right.
And then there is a question from a participant about asking if you could differentiate between extreme weather events, climate hazards, and disasters.
So yeah, climate change contributes to the extreme weather events, and of course the combination of this, the interaction of this will cause the disaster. So I think I was able to share that a while ago. So the extreme weather event is defined that way. So yeah, I hope I was able to address that. So climate change exacerbates it. If not cause it, so it can exacerbate the extreme weather events. And these extreme weather events are, in most cases, the disasters that we are experiencing, those related to the weather and the climate. So that's my response. I hope that's okay.
Right, and the next question is asking, what are the different tools for information sharing during disasters?
Yeah, so that there's a long list of information that needs to be shared, and this depends on our target audience. Yeah, so like during disasters, there's key information about what the hazards are, so that people may know about it and take some measures themselves. So that's important. So it can also be information related to capacities or resources that people can tap or use, which is very important. So information also about response actions being done is also very important to assure the public that, of course, that authorities are doing something. But of course, we also need information that people can access so that they can take measures at their level. So this is very important, so they can become self-sufficient. So this is what we would always prioritize, because we cannot take care of everyone. So resilience has to be built that way as well. So it should be available, the resources and capacities at the lowest level. So that can go a long way. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that answer. The next question is asking if there's any pre-disaster preparation that we can take for countries that are expected to have mass flooding, especially since it keeps happening in the Philippines. And they're asking if we can take preparation steps to reduce mortality and improve preparedness.
Yeah, of course, there's a long list of things that we can do. So that's the good news, and that represents a very good opportunity to make a difference as health people. So I think that is supposed to be the topic or concept that I will share in the next part of my presentation, especially through the case study. So I will focus on that in a bit. Thank you.
All right. The next question is also pertaining to the Philippines, but our participant, Ms. Andrea, is asking if the Philippines has implemented any replication of population centers. Tacloban experienced the same storm surge decades ago, but rebuilt in the same site again. I think the question is referring to whether sites that have faced extreme weather events and disasters are being rebuilt on in the same design as before.
Oh yeah, so it's the recovery and rehabilitation looks into that in terms of site planning and selection. So yeah, so that is very important when we talk about urban development, land use. So those are being considered. And after Tacloban, after Yolanda, so it pretty much shaped how we updated a lot in our building codes. So those are important. But I can share that this can also pose some challenges because in the Philippines, yeah, there is a long list of issues as well. So we have to be mindful of that as well. But in general, these experiences should also influence the way we do these important policies in terms of regulations, site selections, proper planning for constructions, and even land use plan where people should live, where they should relocate, looking at all these hazards. Thank you.
Right. The next question is asking whether climate change can also trigger seismic events such as earthquakes, tsunamis, and increase in volcanic activity.
No, that is not. Climate change doesn't lead to those kinds of disasters. So they're triggered by different mechanisms. So those are geologic phenomena that are not governed by the weather systems, the way climate extreme events are formed, cyclones are formed. Thank you. But those are also important disasters that we should be concerned with, regardless if it's caused by a climate change or not. So, but in the Philippines, we have to do an integrated manner of combining all of these strategies together. So thank you. So that's a question that we would often be asked also. Thank you.
All right. There is a participant, Miss Samira, who's asking if we can get a practical guide from those who have done a vulnerability adaptation assessment. I just want to let you know we'll be covering this in a future session. So I will move on to the next question at this time. One of our participants is asking if you could give some examples of how to reach out to local people or marginalized groups in terms of warning or sharing alerts of natural disasters. If this is going to be covered in the case activity, Dr. Ron, we can move to the next question. Just let me know.
Sure. I'll try to cover that later, but you can remind me at any point. Thank you.
Okay. Do you want to just answer the question now, or you want to bring in the case?
I hope we can bring it to the case study part, yeah, if that is possible.
Yeah. All right. Can you touch a bit on resource mobilization, who is involved, and what are the different levels?
All right. So in terms of resource mobilization, it depends on the structure of a country, depending on the existing policies. But of course, ideally, all levels must be concerned, depending on the magnitude of the disaster. So in the Philippine setting, we have this structure, we have this policy in disaster reduction. So it's pretty much structured. So pretty much everyone is involved. So this is led by government agencies. Different sectors are represented. So we have a national council, but this also includes the private sector, and including other communities as well. So academe, so it's multi-sectoral, it's all of society. So the way we did COVID, it's the similar thing that we have, at least in the Philippine structure. So the more massive the structure, the more sophisticated, the more potential to, and more possibilities to mobilize more resources. And we also would have mechanisms to work with partners. So even international partners at that, offering financial and even technical assistance. So resource mobilization is as good as the how rich your network is. It can also be dependent on the policy and existing mechanisms. And of course, most of the time the challenge would be on coordination. So this should be this thing should be ironed out, and it is better if these things are formalized. So that's what I can share. Thank you.
Thank you. There are a couple questions about cooperation amongst ASEAN countries. So one is asking about whether there is a common plan for preventing and mitigating climate change hazards. And the other is asking whether there is cooperation, inter-ASEAN cooperation amongst health organizations in the region for humanitarian response in times of disasters.
Yeah, of course, there are lots of mechanisms. Like in particular in the ASEAN region, we have several mechanisms. So in terms of disaster reduction, there are many important agreements that we adhere to. And in terms of the health side, the different ASEAN member states are participating in that. So I work for the government. So most of the time, our group, or me, we will represent the Philippines in terms of this. So there's a collective plan, but there is always that effort to build individual country capacities as well. So I'm gonna share some of this in some of my slides towards the end of my presentation. But there are many things going on happening, and even especially after COVID-19, many of these structures are being revisited and even enhanced. So that's quite positive, in this part of the region. So it's very active and very vibrant, if I may say. Thank you.
Another question is asking if the disaster response of richer countries, which are those that have been historically more responsible for greenhouse gas emissions, has their response changed in the past years to those less developed regions experiencing extreme weathers, other than in the form of financial aid?
That's a difficult answer to ask. So I don't think I don't have enough information to answer that. Yeah, so I have more knowledge on the adaptation side, but that's yeah. So maybe some of our experts here can, yeah. So I hope you bear with me. Thank you.
Dr. Ron, can you share some information about what more should be considered in promoting the public health of Indigenous peoples when it comes to extreme weather events and disasters?
Well, yeah, indigenous groups. So they're very important sources of information in terms of government measures to reach out to them. So first, we must listen to them, their voice, and we must seek ways to reach out to them also. So yeah, so that should be in the form of very good community engagement mechanisms, looking into their needs. So they should not be seen only as mere victims. So they also need to be part of the process. So when we talk about early warning systems, so we have to listen to them, and we also have to maybe apply what they are doing. So when we talk about indigenous, not nature-based solutions, so that is also applicable to this topic. So that is a very important context and consideration. Yeah. So this is very important also in the Philippines, where we see these different indigenous groups. Thank you.
All right. And Dr. Ron, if you have any experience speaking to the general public and communicating about how disasters happen and basically how disasters are related to climate change, do you have any tips on how to communicate that? The participant who has shared this says that sometimes in my country, people are sensitive and overreact. On the other hand, there are those who don't mind disasters because of climate change, if I'm interpreting the chat correctly.
Well, I don't know if I will say I am lucky, or maybe we, like Philippines, is in a better position to communicate all of this, just because these are actual lived experiences. So there's not much to discuss about in terms of this issue here, but we need to recognize this, because not all countries in Southeast Asia would have the same experience like the Philippines. So yeah, I know of that issue as well in terms of communicating this risk even within public health. So yeah, but we can also consider the experiences of other countries, because this is the case with extreme weather events. We don't know when this new thing is going to happen to our country. So it's a matter of, it can happen, it's just a matter of when, right? So that's the thing about extreme weather events. So you have to communicate effectively. In our case, we always use our actual experiences. So the unfortunate experiences that we had, really, if I may say, was an important catalyst. And the major policies that we did, the changes, like we will be celebrating the 10 years of Yolanda Haiyan this year. So that Yolanda really massively changed our disaster risk management landscape, at least by way of policy. So yeah, but we can also benefit from a lot of risk communication strategies in terms of this. So I think this is something we need to consider as well. So there are effective tips to do this. So our communications colleagues can give us other examples as well. So yeah, so I'll try to answer this partly as well in the case study later. Thank you.
Okay. Would you like to go ahead and get started with the case study, or do you want to take a couple more questions at this time?
I can take a couple more questions.
So in reference to the questions on vulnerability and adaptation measurements, as well as mitigation strategies, I just want to tell the audience that we will be covering this in later sessions. So I'll try not to spend too much time on that during this session, since it's focusing more so on the public health response to natural disasters and extreme weather events. There is a question about how local governments and communities can prepare for extreme weather events considering limited resources.
So yeah, I think I can address that later with, I'll give a set of strategies, and this should also be applicable to, of course, to local government units. So whether they are resource constrained or not. So yeah, it's going to be the same set of strategies. But yeah, I can try to offer some additional tips as well. So I'll try to do that later if I may.
And perhaps you can give an example from your experience in your department, but how is information shared with the public in real time in the event of disasters?
Oh yeah, that's very important. So we have already seen a lot of progress in terms of that. So like in Yolanda, in Haiyan, so there were information about the storm surge that did not come, or it did come, but it was already late. And when it came, the information was not exact, or maybe, as they say, accurate in terms of the level of magnitude that actually happened or hit. So it's a function of many things. So our reporting system, our early warning system, and yeah, so I can also discuss that later on if you may.
All right, well, at this time, since we're reaching 7 p.m., we will go ahead and switch to the case study, and then we can address any more questions that arise at the end. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, it's okay. So just alert me for anything I might have missed. So let me proceed. I'll turn off my video again to preserve my bandwidth. So moving on. So after knowing the fundamentals of extreme weather events, their impact on our health systems, and what we need to do, at least in general terms. So you asked me very specific questions. Let me do now the case study of our country, the Philippines, to add context. So maybe through this, I can answer your more specific questions. Yeah. So I'll start with this this graph from JICA, Japanese International Cooperation Agency, which is gathered from the MDAT, the disaster database. So globally, climate-related disasters increased more than 80% over the last 4 decades. And these are in the form of floods, extreme weather events, drought, extreme temperature, landslides, and wildfire. So pretty much what I already discussed later on. So these things are happening, and it's happening for the last 4 decades. So, and more than 80% of them. And localizing a bit, let's look at extreme weather events in Asia. So it's more expanded of a view. So yeah, do you know that in Asia, we are 6 times more likely to be affected by disaster events than other regions, other continents in the world. So for a very long period of time, this region has seen a lot of weather-related disasters. This report is saying around 10 times each month, and this leads to about 3,200 lives lost and $3.8 million in economic damages, losses monthly. So this is huge. And the Philippines is truly, it's not an overstatement to say that we are a global hub of disasters. So case in point, in the latest World Risk Report, it came out in 2022, the Philippines is top one in the list of countries with very high disaster risk. So this is because of many factors. Our geography, where we're located, we're in the Ring of Fire, we're in the typhoon belt, we have a very long coastline. Exposure-wise, we have a very big population, and we are also very vulnerable in terms of social and economic vulnerability. Of course, poverty. So these issues are very important when we look at the dimension of vulnerability. So we have all sorts of hazards. So just like in Indonesia, 7-Eleven. So it's like when 7-Eleven is 24/7. So it's right. So we face all sorts of hazards from hydromet. We have typhoons, so we call it typhoons in this part of the world. Floods. We experience droughts as well. We have geophysical hazards, of course, earthquakes. We just had a big drill today. Technological, like fire, transportation accidents, and human-induced hazards as well. So we also have issues with terrorism, conflicts, and of course, biological hazards. We have, of course, dengue fever, cholera, typhoid fever, leptospirosis, and of course, we are not spared from COVID-19 pandemic. It's for sure. So we are a global hub of disasters. So the Philippine disaster story is such that, we're one of the world's most disaster-prone countries. We are in the books in terms of disasters because the Philippines was ground zero to Typhoon Haiyan, or locally we call it Yolanda. So it's the world's strongest by far. So we are experiencing multiple hazards, exposures, and vulnerabilities. And in our experience, natural hazards, and of course, much of this is related to weather, climate, extreme weather events. They're the most common, and they contribute a lot to our problems, to our burden. And these are common health risks that we encounter. So these are problems that we encounter during disaster. So that's missing, number of people missing, of course, injuries, displacement of people. So this is very common with extreme weather events. And of course, we can also have outbreaks of diseases, vaccine preventable diseases, gastroenteritis, even measles, so waterborne diseases. So these are very common outbreaks. And direct impacts, as I shared, it can also destroy or damage our health facilities. That's why our health services may be discontinued, may be interrupted. So when we interrupt routine health services, so we're not able to do our vaccinations, our risk communication, our nutrition programs, our surveillance systems. So this poses bigger health issues for us to handle. And this can also lead to contamination of the environment. So the environment can also be violated by this disasters directly and indirectly. And the most important disaster on record in the Philippine experience is Typhoon Yolanda or Haiyan, because in the literature, in the journal, so this is the strongest typhoon that we recorded. So we experienced winds of 195 miles per hour. So this is a super typhoon, and gustiness of 235 miles per hour. So this is really very big. So it has a very big impact. So it led to many risks and damages. So as you can see here, I would read out each. This is a national disaster that has a lot of global significance as well, because this is one of the few disasters in the world that attracted a lot of foreign medical teams. The number of teams that are coming from different parts of the world even outnumbered the local teams that we have. So this just shows you how big this disaster was. So the health impact was huge, and many actions were taken. And to be honest, yeah, our government, the system was overwhelmed. So this was something unprecedented that happened. And after that, this is what we saw after Haiyan. So this is the epidemiology. So using our surveillance data, we saw that few days after, we had problems with acute respiratory infection. So it peaked in the first few days after the disaster. We also observed injuries in the form of wounds. And this happened also with the background of, you can see here, hypertension, which is very prevalent in the population. And you can also see here that generally consultation rates on this, they decrease the day after the onset of the disaster. So in short, what we saw here are pretty much the same problems that we have even before the disaster. So acute respiratory infections, non-communicable diseases, especially hypertension, and a lot of wounds and injuries, because the second part of the case study is something that happened fairly recently, because that happened almost 10 years ago. But I'd like to share with you this case study of Typhoon Rai. So this is the reason why Philippines was top 1 in the World Risk Report. So this is the second part of the case study. So the case study that I'm gonna use is an actual disaster, again in the form of a typhoon, which, because it's the most frequent and most significant hazard, in terms of magnitude to health risks. And I'd like to detail here our preparations for the response. So let me begin by saying that, there was that question, what are pre-disaster activities? So before the disaster, the premise is that in the Philippines, we would have prevention and mitigation activities, to decrease the exposure and vulnerabilities of the communities. And along with this, of course, preparedness activities to build the capacities of our communities to respond. So these things were in place before the typhoon came in. So this is always the premise for every disaster that we respond to. So we don't only deal with response and preparedness, but a lot of prevention and mitigation would be very important. So if I may move on, in the next few slides, we'll see how an incoming typhoon is being monitored. So this is very important as it comes into our territory. What pre-disaster measures are taken, and I'd like to zero in on the response actions that we are doing, especially in the first 72 hours. So this timing is very important, and this can make or break. So many lives will be lost if we are not so fast, if we are not particular about this. So when the hazard becomes an emergency, so we would also like to say that we need to prevent or minimize the risk of disasters as they come in. And the public health sector, of course, must be prepared for that. So I'm going to highlight that as well. So what's striking about our experience with Typhoon Rai is the fact that, when we're preparing for this typhoon, this was still in the midst of our battle with COVID-19. So talk about concurrent emergencies and disasters. So we had a lot of challenges. We faced struggles managing this. So here's how it went. So in December 10 of 2021, Typhoon Rai or Odette, we first observed this near the equator. So let's go back to where it's coming from. So it developed a tropical disturbance near a site of a low pressure area. So it would always start out as a low pressure area somewhere. And of course, we have a nomenclature, so it depends on the strength of the typhoon. So in the Philippines, it starts out as a tropical depression, and it can escalate to a tropical storm. So right now we have a severe tropical storm now So the severe tropical storm can further strengthen to become a typhoon, and a typhoon can become a super typhoon. So every country will have that kind of a nomenclature. But at any rate, yeah. So after 2 days, this tropical disturbance escalated to our tropical depression. So yeah, the tropical depression, if I may say, yeah, it's like a precursor to your typhoon. So yeah, so a day after, we already conducted. So we have to do this right away. So the sooner we can do this, the better. We conducted what we call a PDR8 or PDRA. So it stands for Pre-Disaster Risk Assessment. So I'm going to discuss in the following slides how exactly was this done. So the PDRA or PDRA, so this is a process that we do to evaluate. So this is pre-disaster, right? So it's not yet a disaster, but we have to monitor the hazard. We have to look at the risks given the degrees of exposure and vulnerability in a specific area. So we look at the impacts on the population. And this is very important because this is our basis for the response that we need to do. And this guided us from national level down to the local government units, because especially typhoons, they would always impact on cause damages to many different areas. So in most cases, this is national, considering that it involves multiple regions. So in essence, this process is hazard specific, but we also look at the interaction. So like a tropical storm can come in, but it can also interact with the monsoon, with what we call the habagat. So there are also other weather systems that might also prevail. So all of these are analyzed in terms of their impacts. And this is also area focused. We are talking about these things happening on very specific places. And this is also time bound. So that we can say that at this particular day, this particular time, so we have seen a lot of progress in terms of our predictive capability. So if I may say that, in our local weather agency capability. So yeah, so this shows you the overall PDRA process. So yeah, first, the warning agency. So we have the Pag-asa in the Philippines. So it's our warning agency. So it will detect the hazard, specifically here, typhoons, based on specific triggers. And then here, this will trigger the convening of, there's an analyst group. So this is a group of people monitoring this, coming from different agencies. They make the initial assessment, and then a meeting will be called. And then another big meeting will be done wherein the discussions will happen. So this meeting will now involve the different response agencies. So this is where the Department of Health will already be coming in. So by then, that the health sector must already know what's coming in. So we have to be quick in making decisions and already activate response protocols as outcomes of these important meetings. And of course, all of this is science-based, based on this process. So I believe all our countries would have systems or semblance of systems like this. So this is the actual checklist that we have. So this is a checklist of actions that we have for our EPR, our Emergency Preparedness and Response Protocols. So in the case of our local government units, the actions are based on our interior and local government is overseeing the response of different localities. So we follow a certain checklist. So that contains actions. So these checklists are also based on the nature of the hazard. So we have checklists for different kinds of hazards. So we have checklists for hydromet hazards. We also have a checklist for volcanic hazards. So again, as I said, it should be hazard specific. So during the PDRA, we are also developing scenarios. So here we use a lot of projections. So these are already available capacities and systems that we have. So we have a platform by our science agency. We have this geoanalytics platform. So we're able to project the number of people who can be affected based on the hazard. So for example, here you can see one province in the southern parts of the Philippines, Lanao del Sur. So we're able to determine the number of people who will be exposed to the flood and even the rain-induced landslides. So a simple typhoon coming in can bring about more problems like floods and landslides. So that's part of the process. Again, going back to Odette, based on the PDRA, we would generate a risk matrix. So you can see here this risk matrix. You can see here the different regions that will be affected in different risk categories. So green represents very low risk, low as the yellow one, medium, the orange ones, and the high risk are represented by the red ones. So here, Manila, which is part of the National Capital Region, has very low risk. That's why it's in green. Region 3 has low risk, Region 5, medium risk, and you can see here which regions are at risk. So we know which areas are going to have this problem. So after identifying the regions and the risk levels, this should also correspond to the level of alert that will be raised. So again, this is an important part of our early warning system. So after knowing about the alert, getting the alert, the details, so we need to mount as early as we can the needed response in terms of our protocol. So here we have some categories or nomenclature. So Alpha, Bravo, Charlie. So in our response plan, in our disaster plan in the country, if at least 2 regions will be affected, it will be national level who shall take charge. So that is why for Typhoon Odette, it was national in scope. So this is the reason why national was the one overseeing the PDRA process here. But when we were doing this, of course, the local government units are already actively involved, have already been looked in. They were already doing the preparations needed. So again, this is real time. So the moment they know about this, they're already doing the actions. So most of the pre-disaster activities have to be checked at this particular point in time already. So as a result, I'd like to show how we would do the important guidelines after all of this. So we were able to identify high-risk regions. So around 6 to 7 of them, we declared them under what we call state of calamity. So this is important in order to mobilize the needed resources. So this will partly address that question. So you have to have the mechanism so you can trigger more resources. So you can tap more agencies. So you can tap international partners, for example. So we have those mechanisms in place. In this case, in our response plan, based on the PDRA and the anticipated concerns, we recommended which clusters. So our Philippine response system is also characterized by a good system employing what we call the cluster approach. So clusters are different groups of agencies working on specific areas of disasters to meet the needs of the population. So all of these are activated. So for Typhoon Odette, specifically, we were able to activate the following clusters based on the projections and analysis. So we activated camp management because many people are going to be displaced. We activated the food and non-food items, search, rescue, and retrieval because we were anticipating landslides, remember, and then emergency telecommunications. So because this is a very plausible scenario that we saw, and this actually happened. No? So these are generic actions. So from here, we would craft our directives or tasks. So these are communicated. So you communicate the hazards. You should also communicate the very actions that need to be taken. So as massively and as effectively as you can. So here, tasks had to do with conducting inventory of logistics resources, preparing the teams and resources, prepositioning if needed, if resources are not enough, and we would have to report also preparedness measures. So this is also very important information that we need to inform the public about, right? And we also directed that there should be very good coordination with regional and local counterparts through our disaster council. So as I said, we have a very structured system of response using our disaster council. So our disaster council exists at the national, regional, even up to the local levels. To complete our emergency preparedness and response protocols, this is the one that we recommended for approval. So if I may read one by one, so you can see here the different regions which are going to be affected, the levels of risk. We put out the following actions here. So for the reds, require immediate action. So that corresponds to Charlie. So that means when you raise red alert, we activate the emergency operations center and the corresponding response clusters. So that would have to do with the specific clusters that I already mentioned. So this is how it is. So the early warning should translate to action and response actions to the in the different areas that are going to be affected. So that's the next question is, after doing the PDRA, the multi-sector PDRA, after conducting it, you should ask about this. So what did the Ministry of Health, what did our Department of Health do? So immediately after this, so after conducting the PDRA, the Department of Health, we disseminated a weather alert memo to all our regional offices and to the hospitals that we are managing. So we did positioning and we prepared logistics to be distributed to the affected areas. And we did continuous monitoring of the weather condition, of course, and looking out for other media updates. These were the steps that we took as Department of Health. So these are pre-disaster actions that we did. So before Odette came in, before it entered our territory, we already disseminated the memo to our operating units. We attended all the meetings on PDRA. We disseminated the memo. We raised the cold alert status. Again, I said that we did a quick inventory of our logistics. We activated our operation center for continuous monitoring. And just to repeat, we prepared the logistics to be mobilized effectively. So, and then, yeah, so we did a lot of things. And then finally, as anticipated, Odette entered the Philippine Area of Responsibility. So around 3 to 4 days after, December 14, it entered our Philippine Area of Responsibility. So it had sustained winds of 16 kilometers per hour near the center, gustiness of 205 kilometers per hour, central pressure of this strong. So it made 9 landfalls. So it entered our territory and it hit landmass. So this is the problem. So of course, a hazard always comes in, but sometimes it doesn't hit the landmass. But when it hits landfall, that creates the problems for us. So, but this is more problematic because this made 9 landfalls, and immediately as it hit landmass, tropical cyclone wind signals were raised as it traversed the country. So yeah, the Typhoon Rai, it entered the PAR, Philippine Area of Responsibility. And contrary to predictions, again, this is how things can change. Rai intensified from a tropical storm. So it immediately became a super typhoon within hours before making its landfall. And it brought torrential rains, violent winds, floods, and as anticipated and projected, landslides. So we had the landfall on December 16 at 1:30 p.m. in the islands of Siargao and Dinagat, 3:30 p.m. 2 days after Odette entered our territory, this shows you how it progressed. So it moved southeast. So it's always important to track the location. So it made its first landfall in Siargao. Then, yeah, after 7. So just to correct, 7 landfalls, it weakened. So the left picture is Siargao Island, where the first landfall happened. So I'd like you to compare it with the picture before, with the before picture. So Siargao, we're very proud of this place because it's a very famous tourism destination, especially for surfing. Caraga region, this is the region where Siargao is. It's one of the badly hit areas of the country, so causing widespread damage to household, communities, and health facilities as well. So it affected 5 provinces, 6 cities, 67 municipalities, 1,094 barangays, the lowest level of our government, more than 400,000 families, and 1.6 million people were affected. A total of 700 evacuation centers. The temporary shelters were put in place. So this is a big number to manage. So this is overwhelming, really. So all in all, the damages translates to around, in US dollars, around $6 million, and terms of losses, around 1.6 million. So in total, we had damages and losses to the health system to the tune of 8.7 million US dollars. So some pictures of the impacts of Odette to our hospitals. So the Siargao District Hospital to your left, the Caraga Regional Hospital. So it's a main government hospital in the region, and the smaller health facilities, the barangay health stations. So the agricultural sector also suffered. So around 50 million US dollars. So in terms of crops damaged, livestock affected, fisheries, infrastructure, and equipment. And on top of this, we also had problems on, as expected, electricity, water, and telecommunication. These were disrupted. These were rendered non-functional. Transportation was severely hampered, and roads and bridges were not passable. So this was the main challenge, getting there, making sure what we prepared for will be distributed, and with no communication to begin with. So when it happened, with the presented challenges, these are the steps that we took as Ministry of Health to address this. So we coordinated with our health cluster members. So this is part of our structure. The lead of our national disaster response is our Office of Civil Defense. So we also work closely with our uniformed colleagues, the armed forces. We coordinated with airlines to be able to support our hospitals there, especially those that are damaged, and to make sure that we're able to transport our logistics to them. So because they did not have enough, even if they prepared, it was not enough. So we had to provide augment, but we had to make sure we had a way of sending this to them. So we attended a lot of response cluster meetings, coordinate. We did a lot of activities to deploy our teams. We assisted our president, our secretary of health, and other officials. They visited the affected areas. So we supported the deployment of local teams. So those who were not affected. So we have some teams coming from some areas that were not affected. So we have also activated our surveillance system in the evacuation centers to prevent outbreaks of diseases. And we provided technical assistance on response and on recovery. So I'd like to highlight the importance of coordination with other sectors. So definitely this is one big response. So, but the main challenge as well is, of course, this coincided with our COVID-19 response. So as stories are, they would end by, it concluded, this case study would conclude with the typhoon leaving our Philippine area of responsibility. So December 18, after another 4 days after it hit landfall, and it had a very high magnitude. So of course, this meant that the response will have to be ongoing. So we were able to respond to the first phase of the disaster, but then we also have to be on the lookout for other possible health issues that will be part of the ongoing response. So that ends the case study. And Raisa, if I can proceed with this interactive exercise, I'm just going to switch my screen. So just some questions to engage our learners, and then immediately after that, I can start entertaining questions again. So if I may be allowed to do that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Law. I just want to let all of our participants know, I know we are at the 7:30 p.m. mark, so if some of you need to go ahead and leave, that is totally okay, but we are going to continue the session at this time. Dr. Law will share some interactive questions, and then I'll end the session with some end of session reminders about the course, and also a little bit of information about the next session. For those of you that cannot stay on, we will be emailing the slide deck, the presentation, as well as some additional links and reminders, so please don't feel like you'll be missing anything. Dr. Law, you can go ahead and continue your questions at this time.
So thanks again. Just at this point, I invite everyone to join this Slido set of questions. So you can see here the code, and it's just going to be very short, just 3 questions, so we can have more interaction. So yeah, we'll give some time for people to join in. And the first so let me know if you're able to see it now. Yeah, so you've been providing your response. So the first question is about pre-disaster preparations. So which of this will you do before? So you're a vacationing health consultant in one of the affected areas that will be affected by typhoon. So you will inform and mobilize the community to do something about the warning. Very good. So most are also saying that yeah, you need to already conduct a preemptive evacuation and move to higher, safer grounds. And have that go bag ready. All right, so with 74 people joining, so I think yeah, majority says that you will inform and mobilize the community to already do something about the warning. And what are these activities? So these are the things I mentioned. So said it's very good. So all of these are correct. Yeah. So only 1% will leave the light around. So yeah. So all of you, nice to know you want to make yourself useful while you're there. So that's a great and smart answer. So right. So let me go to the next question, if I may. So yeah. So now we move to the response part. So if ever the local government asks you, yeah, as a health consultant, what health activities need to be done during the disaster, what will you advise? So what message are you going to give during the disaster? I can see surveillance, assess, of course, stay calm, yeah. Wash, distribute food, SRR, emergency care, to be resilient. Emergency care, yeah, this is the correct answer. So yeah, emergency care. So kitchen, self-reliance, yeah. So in general, you're all correct. So majority saying emergency care. So this should be the main priority at this particular phase, because the main objective here is the life-saving part, which I already discussed a while ago. So very good response. And the other answers are also correct, but they may have to be done, of course, in relation to the emergency care. So surveillance will be there to prevent diseases, outbreaks of diseases. So all sorts of things. All of these are also correct, but it has to be in the way of how we package the health services, the emergency care that's needed by the affected population, right? So moving to the last part of this. Yeah. So this is the last part. So assuming the typhoon has left the country, in the long term, what health measures should be the top priorities to prevent and mitigate the impacts of extreme weather events? So choose your favorite strategy. It's exciting to see how your response is making my slide move despite the weak internet connection that I have. So early warning systems, we need to improve it, investigate, improve health surveillance, wash water supply sanitation, better education and awareness, trainings and exercises on the health emergency response. So yeah, I'm just trying to get a feel about the most common priorities that you will have, at least this group in the call. So I think this is pretty good. So we have to improve health surveillance, water supply sanitation, that's very strong. Early warning systems, better education and awareness. So I think we're already okay with this. So thank you again for your participation, the interaction. So all of these are correct, but at least we were able to get your pulse in terms of what do you think is very important. And of course, this will vary a lot in terms of our context. So for the next part of the presentation, I'll go back to my slides deck. So I will already stop this Slido presentation. So thanks again, everyone, for your participation. So let me go back to my slide deck quickly. So are you able to see again my slide deck? So yeah, so after doing that interactive exercise, so how are we going to have a holistic response to extreme weather events? So that is the question. So apologies for that. I'm gonna share it again. All right. So yeah, so I already skipped this part in the interest of time. So, but this may be useful for you. So yeah, I should have shown you these slides before asking you those questions, but you may find this useful also. So yeah, it's a common scenario here. So LPA or low pressure area is always coming in Philippines, and but this year in the Philippines, as I shared, according to our Philippine Weather Agency, yeah, so this is happening already here because we have a typhoon. So like for this particular month, we are expecting 1 to 2 tropical cyclones. And this is happening on top of our El Nino. So we already raised our red warning alert for El Nino. So we are seeing that dry spell and drought will be imminent. So in a few weeks time, this is gonna happen, and this trend will continue. Our weather agency said until the first quarter of next year, 2024. So again, the interaction of these events and phenomena. So what to expect? So this is, so you already answered this, in fact. So again, to provide some response again from our experience. So in our government's response system, again, the case study highlighted the importance of an early warning system. So we relate it to probabilities of extreme weather. Again, the definition of extreme weather, looking at the probabilities and looking also at the impact side of it. This is very important. So instead of asking what the weather will be, now we ask what the weather will do. So this is more of looking at it at the impact side. So this will allow us to prevent and mitigate better. So how does this work? So yeah, with weather and climate extremes that are already with us, so we should be able to analyze this weather patterns and trends and be able to forecast data. So this is looking at the track of the tropical cyclone, the size and intensity. Now, this has to be translated to hazards. So what does this mean to us? So we have to extract relevant information to predict hazards. So again, this tropical cyclone or typhoon can lead to more specific hazards like storm surges, the likes of Yolanda, flooding, and even rain-induced landslides. So further, to be more specific, we need to be able to estimate the impact. So we put it to a situational context. So this is where the PDRA comes in. So we have to figure out affected areas, population and infrastructure to be affected, and even disruption of services and damages due to wind and flood, for instance. And this is the most important part of this framework. So that's why it's EWARS. So the R is the response part. So early actions and early response. So we can still do mitigation even if it's already in our midst by doing this important measure. So in our Philippine experience, we can say that we were able to save a lot of lives just by doing preemptive evacuation. So this is something that's very important. So the government has to be very effective. The community should participate in these important activities to prevent and mitigate. Early harvesting, this is true for crops because agriculture might be severely affected. Yeah, one of the response options regarding strengthening the house, this is very practical to do. And here we should trigger the release of emergency funds. Remember, we declared the state of calamity, and we also should have a lot of cash transfer mechanisms to support the affected community. So this is important in mounting a response to the extreme weather event. So again, this slide will show you a summary of measures. So this is a long list to prevent or mitigate extreme weather events. So those that are in bold are these are what I believe to be directly applicable to our work in public health. So again, first in the list, early warning systems, risk communication, very important. Land management. So I partly referred to this. Yeah, after Yolanda, we have to do land management, ecosystem management, improvements in health surveillance, water supply, and sanitation. So these are the answers in the quiz a while ago. So irrigation and drainage systems can be improved when we talk about flooding hazards. So this is important, but other sectors, of course, must look into this. We will just be impacted if nothing is done about this. Of course, climate proofing of infrastructure, especially talking about our health facilities. So this is something that we must do and we must be particular about. Development and enforcement of building codes. So I highlighted this one because, again, this refers to our hospitals. So we must comply with the standards. So here in the Philippines, we have safe hospital standards. But I can tell you that, yeah, it can be a challenge enforcing it at the local government unit level. So one of the most common responses that you have is better education and awareness. This is very important. So we can really have this whole of society response to extreme weather events. We also need to have multi-hazard risk management approaches. So not just looking at one hazard. So we look at how it interacts dynamically with other hazards. So you're not just looking at typhoons. That typhoon can give you a lot of rain. It can give you severe flooding. It can cause landslides. It can lead to storm surges. So things like that. And we need to integrate this with local knowledge and scientific and technical knowledge. So this is how we should harness the knowledge of indigenous groups. So we need to integrate what they know with the things that we know as scientists. So with scientific and technical knowledge, all of this must be translated to our communication strategies and all our interventions. So we need to have appropriate and timely risk communication, as I highlighted. And then in the academic side of it, of course, monitoring, research, evaluation, and continuous learning, and of course, innovation. Yeah. So I hope we can do most of this in our own settings. So this will require a lot of efforts, investments, coordination, and the academe has also to contribute to all of this. So I'd like to share with you at this point how we manage it. So we use this framework in the Philippines. So extreme weather events, we are very sure that these are the ones that causing the disasters that we are very concerned about. So we believe there's no option but to manage this holistically. So here in the Philippines, we do integrated climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction. And yeah, we also need to do a lot of course, climate change mitigation as well. So in the Philippines, we use this framework. So in terms of our actions, we follow the DRR phases. So some of you may be familiar about this. So it includes prevention and mitigation, preparedness, response to recovery and rehabilitation. So here, we do the all hazards approach. So to us, this is not just a mere concept. We have no option but to do the all hazards approach. So to achieve the outcome of a safer, adaptive, and disaster resilient country towards sustainable development. So what we're doing here is related to our big development goals. So after COVID-19, we updated our Philippine Development Plan. And our Philippine Development Plan will always have something about disaster resilience. So this is something that is, yeah, this is a very common feature of our policies here. So we identified 3 important key result areas. So one is on DRR, one is on disaster preparedness and response, and another one on building back better. So these are rooted in the pillars of the Sendai framework on DRR. So you should look this up. The Sendai framework on DRR. So this is our blueprint when it comes to disaster risk reduction. So this talks about understanding the risk, strengthening risk governance, investing for resilience, and enhancing preparedness for response and building back better. So our approach is rooted and aligned with this major international agreements as well that we are adhering to as a country. And just to add, of course, in our context, we don't have a perfect system, but we have made significant progress through the years, but we keep on learning. And we make some mistakes, but we try to be wiser each time we address these extreme weather events. So what are the challenges that we have as we're still a low middle income country in terms of our economic classification. So in responding to extreme weather events, so we still have these challenges. So how to secure more financial investments, how to get more money, how to mobilize more resources, especially addressing the needs of those that are more economically disadvantaged. So many areas in the Philippines are still economically challenged. So, and they also happen to be the more vulnerable ones as well. So that's a consideration. How to enable data-driven decision-making. So how to use science, how to use data in all of these response interventions, how to better prepare. So how to prioritize disasters and health. So yeah, disaster is a big priority in every local government, but we still need to do a lot of advocacy in terms of what the health sector should do. Because in the local government units, there are many sectors competing for the small money that is available. So health has to do a lot of things as well to prioritize it. So we also need to enhance the capacities of our health workforce. So because our health workforce is facing a lot of challenges. So in the Philippines, they have to deal with many disasters. How to provide access to logistics and innovations and technologies, and how to integrate our delivery of services. So these are challenges that we are still facing in the Philippines. So I'm gonna go to the regional level. So looking at the impacts and the vulnerability of Asia, specifically the ASEAN region, to extreme weather events. Yeah, just to support what I earlier said, that there are several mechanisms, policies and guidelines, and a lot of capacity building activities that are in place to respond to extreme weather events. For one, we have the ADMER. The ADMER is it's an agreement on disaster management and emergency response. So it's a big program that we're implementing, and we have here our mantra in the region. We call it One ASEAN, One Response. So here we want to increase the speed of our response, expand our scale in terms of the response. So we also like to highlight our solidarity. So this is something that we are quite proud about. So the ASEAN solidarity is very important. It's an important resource that we are always mentioning. So there's a project. So we are participating in, we call it the ARCH project. So basically this is to improve the implementation of disaster health management in the region. So the Philippines is part of this, and we have been sharing a lot of our experiences, and we also get a lot of learnings from our colleagues in the region. In climate change and extreme weather events, I would like to say are important health threats being addressed. So in the ASEAN work program on health, there is such a cluster just focused on health threats. And I want to assure you that climate change and disasters, as they relate to health, are there. So there's a long list of problems that we are dealing with our neighbors. So those of us in the government are participating in those, and we participate in those working groups. We also do our share of advocacy campaigns and sharing of good practices and conduct of training such as this to contribute to the building of health resilience, not only in the region. And yeah, we think we can also be the regional hub for disaster. So aside from experiencing this disaster, so we'd also like to share a bit of the good that we're doing to the rest of the world. So I hope we can help you out on this. So together, using our solidarity. So I'd just like to end by imparting some key things about what to think about when it comes to our preparedness. How do we prepare our health system better for extreme weather events? So just 3 key things. First, we need to focus on not only the big high impact disasters that are dramatic, that are visible, tangible in terms of lives lost and devastation, decimating many places. But we also need to focus our attention on the smaller but longer term emergencies, such as climate change, which can lead to more extreme weather events like drought. So some of this we cannot see, but this can have indirect impacts also on the health system. So both the big high impact ones that we will always record, that will always be the reasons why we're top in the list, but also the smaller but longer term emergencies that are happening. So this is very important. Second, we need to strengthen our response being a health sector. But we also need to improve our collaboration. We need to do very good collaboration also with partners, because some sectors also have determinants impacting on health. So you need to work with water, you need to work with infrastructure, you need to work with social welfare, because they also impact on health. And in response, you would also need their help. So we need to really mount a very comprehensive response. But let's not forget to also include prevention and mitigation. So preparedness, response, but we need to be better in terms of prevention and mitigation. And yeah, we need to address also the variable impacts of climate change within communities. So we need to look at this dimension as well, because in the communities, there are different vulnerable groups and they have different experiences. They have different levels of exposure and vulnerability. And we need to focus on capacitating them as well and empowering them, not only busy always with the big preparedness and response. So community level interventions and strategies are equally important. And it's not only the job of the government to do all of this. So I'd like to end by showing you some of the references that you can further look up. So this formally ends my presentation, so I can take in questions again. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Law. That was a very involved presentation and it encompassed a lot of different topics. So it was very insightful. Thank you for that. I don't see any questions in the chat at this time. And just to be respectful of the time, since we are about 30 minutes past the scheduled session, I'm going to go ahead and just share some reminders for the course. All right, are you all able to see my screen okay? All right, so basically, I've received some questions about how attendance is going to be monitored. So I just want to let you know that we are externally able to monitor who is joining for the Zoom sessions, and that's how we're keeping track of attendance. If you do need to leave early from the sessions, your attendance will still be counted, especially since both the first session and today's session, we have exceeded the allotted time. So we will count your attendance if you have joined. At the first session, we had administered a pre-course survey. I have shared the link today as well. So if you have not completed the pre-course survey, please take a moment to complete it. I shared the link, like I said, in the chat. There will only be one pre-course survey during the entire course. And then there will be a post-course survey at the very end of the course. So only 2 surveys throughout the entire duration of the course. For those of you asking if you will be receiving the PowerPoints as well as the recordings, the answer is yes. We will be sending you links to these resources at the end of the session. So you'll be receiving a weekly email every Monday. Please be on the lookout for that. The weekly email will also include information about upcoming sessions. The next session is going to be delivered next Tuesday. As I had mentioned early in the session, every session of the course will have an external closed captioning link for additional accessibility. If needed, you can open this link on a separate window and see closed captioning of the lecture. Unfortunately, we only have this available in English. At the beginning of the session, we had received a presentation from Brian Lung from the Belmont Forum, and he had shared some information about available funding opportunities for environmental research. The link is shared here, and we will also include this link in the follow-up weekly email. Thank you so much for attending this session and for your continued participation in the course. As a reminder, the next session will be held at the same time on Tuesday, June 13th. If you have other questions about the scheduling, please refer to the course website for relevant information, or you can email those of us who are listed on the weekly emails for additional information. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, I don't think I see any additional questions at this time. All right, thank you so much, Dr. Ron Law. We were so delighted to have you.
My pleasure too. So I'll be, they can reach out to me and I can answer any questions that you may able to relate to me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm sharing the links here one more time for those of you who are unable to access them earlier. And I'll leave the Zoom session on for another 5 minutes, and then I'll conclude the section. All right, thank you, everyone. I'll be closing the Zoom session at this time. Goodbye. See you next week.